There are various pathways for you to be able to move into this beautiful country, but today I'm going to talk about perhaps the most popular pathway called the skilled migrant category, or SMC as it is more popularly called. My name is Arun Jacob, and I am a licensed immigration advisor of New Zealand. I proudly carry a license from the government of New Zealand, which allows me to sit here and talk to you about the migration possibilities into New Zealand. There are various pathways for you to be able to move into this beautiful country, but today I'm going to talk about perhaps the most popular pathway called the skilled migrant category, or SMC as it is more popularly called. What does the skilled migrant category stand for? Well, I think it is self-evident from the words itself that this is a category of visas that was introduced by the government of New Zealand to attract people with skills or talent to be able to come into New Zealand and contribute their skills to the growth of our industries and our economy. Now, what are these skills? I mean, obviously, anybody who is working and anybody who's qualified will have a certain set of skills. But not all skills are in shortage in New Zealand. And the government of New Zealand, in conjunction and in discussion with the industry here in our country, keeps coming out with a published list called the Long-Term Skills Shortage List, which perhaps is the best list to consider if you are looking to migrate under the skilled migrant category. What does the long-term skills shortage list have in it? Off the top of my head, and remember that it has got people or skills that we require in New Zealand are from industries like construction, health and social services. We have a requirement of chefs, which comes under the hospitality industry. We have a requirement of spatial scientists, and of course, like many other countries around the world, we have a requirement of information technology professionals as well. That is not the complete exhaustive list. There are other professions in it. But like I said, there is an exhaustive list, and a professional like myself or one of my colleagues from AJV Global can do an assessment of your background, your qualifications, and your experience and tell you whether you match the kind of skills that we're looking for here in New Zealand. Right, so you made up your mind that you want to migrate, and you also realize that you have some skills within you which could be transferable to other countries, especially to one like New Zealand. What is your next step? The next step is to see whether you acquire the required number of points to actually be able to make a successful visa application under the skilled migrant category to New Zealand. And what are these points? These points are a combination of your age, your qualification, your work experience, and which area did you qualify, what was the main subject, what was the industry you worked in, and so on and so forth. And also, if you're married or you're in a relationship, it also takes into consideration the points of your spouse or your partner, and that could also be a contribution. Again, I am not giving you the complete exhaustive list because these are all technical, legal steps that need to be done sitting at a desk and going through each and every detail of your background. There is a calculator provided on the Immigration New Zealand website, and a lot of our prospective clients end up going to this calculator and doing a self-analysis of how many points they're getting. Just a word of caution that calculator can sometimes be misleading or give you the wrong information because there are layers within layers of the immigration law of New Zealand, and only a well-trained professional like myself or one of my other colleagues from AJV Global can assess to see that the points you're claiming can actually be awarded to you. Another word of caution, the skilled migrant category visa application to New Zealand is subject to two very important rules or boxes you need to tick. Box number one, you need to have an offer of employment in New Zealand or be already employed in New Zealand, because then it gives you a certain number of points. If you do not have either one of this, then box number two, you need to have studied in New Zealand for a period of at least 2 years and gotten yourself a master's or a PhD qualification. So you need to tick either one of those boxes for you to be able to progress towards making the application for the skilled migrant category. And the steps in the application, at step 1, once you realize you have the right number of points, you put in something called an expression of interest. And after the expression of interest, Immigration New Zealand will keep dipping into that pool of all these EOIs, as they are called, and every fortnight they do a selection. And they tend to pick the ones with the highest points and work down from there. And once you're picked from there, then you go into the next stage, which is called the invitation to apply, which is the more technical aspect of the whole visa application, because then you're actually submitting physical documents for further processing of your visa. So there you have it. So those are the steps, those are the skills, those are the points. And the best way for you to get started with this is to reach out to AJV Global. As I told you already, we are a group of licensed immigration advisors, and many of our licensed immigration advisors are also ex-immigration officers of New Zealand. We have the right expertise, we have the right attitude, and we have the presence in New Zealand to be able to ensure that you and your family can move to New Zealand under the skilled migrant category. In certain instances where you cannot get directly through the skilled migrant category, there is something called the skilled migrant category job search visa. But again, once we do the assessment, we will be able to advise you whether you can come in directly through the SMC category or the SMC job search visa category. For all this, you require expert guidance, and that is why there are people like myself and the rest of my colleagues at AJV Global. We are licensed advisors for New Zealand, and we sit here to provide you with the most authentic, honest, and sincere information and back it up by professional services so that you and your family can move into New Zealand and start calling this beautiful country your home forever. Very good question. A lot of people wonder about this. Can I get a visitor visa and come to New Zealand and find a job? Well, technically, there's no reason why you cannot do that. Although I must again caution you that when you are applying for a visitor visa, they will ask you what is the purpose of your visit to New Zealand. And you might end up mentioning there that you're here to visit family and friends, or you're here for tourism purposes, which are the two most commonly used reasons for visitor visas to New Zealand. But while you're making your application, if you can also mention, and while I'm there in New Zealand, whether for tourism or to visit my family and friends, I will also like to look around and see what are the career opportunities for myself and knock on the few doors of some agencies or recruitment companies and see where I stand. There's nothing wrong with it. And as long as somebody is going to make you a genuine job offer while you're on a visitor visa, you can still process and apply for your resident visa or a further work visa. Well, technically, that's what a recruitment company is supposed to do, is to help people to find jobs in New Zealand, especially in areas where there is a shortage of skills and they have simply not been able to find that particular talent or those particular skills. But unfortunately, remember and bear in mind that a recruitment company really does not understand immigration law per se, and so they shy away from talking to anybody who does not have the legal ability or the visa to work in New Zealand. So by and large, from my experience, I've noticed that recruitment companies try not to encourage people who don't have the legal working right in New Zealand, and which is the reason also why most of our job advertisements and some of our leading job websites state clearly at the bottom saying that do not apply if you don't have the legal working right in New Zealand. So this becomes a bit of a chicken and egg story, because Immigration New Zealand says we will give you a further visa, a work visa or a resident visa if somebody is going to give you a job offer. But most of the people or employers who can give you a job offer say, we will only give you a job offer if you have a work visa. So it becomes that very classic catch-22 or a chicken and egg story, and which is where a good advisor like AJV Global can come in very handy. And what we do is we do work in tandem with some recruitment agencies, and where they find good talent, but if the person does not have the working right, we work with the recruitment agency and the candidate and bring it all together by also applying for the right visa. The skilled migrant category points calculator on Immigration New Zealand website is very popular, and I have nothing against it. But the problem in using that particular calculator is that there are layers within layers of immigration law. And sometimes, for instance, somebody with a Bachelor of Commerce degree might go on and put those details into that calculator, and it will come back and say that you are getting certain number of points. But as I told you, there are layers within layers, and sometimes there are also factors that need to be brought into consideration, like which university was that from? Was it in the full study mode or in the distance education mode? And as far as your experience is concerned, what industry was it in? Which country was this particular company based in? So on and so forth. So I can't get into the nitty-gritty of all the details, and which is where sometimes you can be misled by that calculator on the Immigration New Zealand website. On a weekly basis, we get a lot of clients who come to us and say, hey, look, I checked my details on the Immigration New Zealand website, and I'm getting the required number of points to make a visa application. Can we move forward from here? And then we as professionals in this industry undertake the same assessment one more time. We realize that they're actually falling short of those points. Every person would love to think that they're qualifying to migrate to New Zealand, and sometimes they will probably also put in the wrong inputs into that calculator, and which is where you might end up with the wrong output as well. And hence my sincere, strong suggestion, please always consult a good professional organization like AJV Global, and we will come back to you with the right calculation of those points. Not just that, but you can also have a good unlimited discussion with one of our licensed immigration advisors and plan that entry into New Zealand very properly and in the most professional manner. It normally depends whether you have applied for the skilled migrant category and your location does matter, whether you're already in New Zealand, which are called onshore applicants, or whether you're outside New Zealand and you've applied for the skilled migrant category visa while you're outside New Zealand. So that is also a factor. And I guess the most important factor is how many points you're getting. The way Immigration New Zealand works is they like to work with the people getting the highest number of points, which makes sense because who wouldn't want to pick up the most skilled and most talented people and try and hold them on for your own country and for your own economy. So that's how it works. So it's a various set of factors that can tell you, that can determine how long the process can take. Like I said, the location from where the application is lodged, how many points that applicant is getting, and which particular industry that applicant is applying. Because for instance, suddenly we have something called the immediate skills shortage. And if it so happens that your skill is now in an immediate skill shortage, then obviously the visa officers will get a directive internally saying, can we fast track these particular applications? So there's no hard and fast rule that applications have to be determined in a particular period of time. And also sometimes when visa officers are trying to verify the documents and if there's no response from those particular organizations, also there could be a delay. So the thumb rule is that it can take between 12 to 18 months for a skilled migrant category resident visa application, but it could happen faster if some of the factors work in your favor. New Zealand is a country that encourages and assists families to stay together. It is something that is enshrined in us as a country, in our ethos, and we are all about family reunification and ensuring that families stick together, because after all, families are the building blocks of any society. So when you are applying for a skilled migrant category, you will be the primary applicant, but your spouse and your children, or if you're not married, but only in a relationship, sometimes that can also be recognized as a de facto partnership. And yes, you will be able to include your partner or your spouse and your children into your application. Again, there will be some layers within that particular clause. And once you check with an organization like AJV Global, we can tell you who are all the family members that can be included and how quickly this can be processed. So there you have it. The skilled migrant category pathway into New Zealand is definitely one of our most popular pathways. And we at AJV Global would love to help you if you're one of those skilled migrants who is planning to come into New Zealand either by yourself or with your family, and make this beautiful country your home. We are here to serve you and to serve New Zealand and to match your skills to this beautiful country. And in doing that, create happiness for you and your family and a better New Zealand for all of us who proudly call this country our home.